I'm from New York, and for over 25 years, it was the only home I've known. It's the place I fell in love, it's the place I got my heart broken, and it's the place I learned to be an activist. I've been an activist for a long time, longer than I can remember, and I realized the most important thing about being an activist is to listen. If you speak to people and recognize that people are experts of their own experiences, you will learn much more than you ever could going it alone. So I decided to follow those voices, and they led me to Mississippi.
Access denied, food deserts and disability in Mississippi.
Mississippi, the Magnolia State, the 20th state to enter the Union, home to Fannie Lou Hamer, Medgar Evers, and James Meredith. Mississippi is full of interesting and powerful intersections. It has one of the highest populations of people with disabilities, but one of the highest rates of unemployment for people with disabilities in the nation, too. Throughout my research, one state echoed through the pages, its name as haunting as it is complicated to spell. Mississippi, Mississippi. There's also another complex relationship at play, food. Mississippi is also one of the most fertile states in the nation, with agribusiness bringing in billions of dollars. But it's also home to food deserts. Simply put, a food desert is an area with limited or no access to fresh food. Discounting restaurants or convenience stores, bodegas as we call them back home, they represent a lack of grocery stores selling fresh things like produce, meat, fruits, and vegetables. My question was this: how do food deserts work for people with disabilities? How does having a disability hinder you from getting to fresh fruits, vegetables, and meat, even if the store is right around the corner? There was no way I could come up with this answer on my own, but I could sit and listen to those who did. Today I'm speaking with State Senator Hillman Frazier. Senator Frazier has been a public servant of the state of Mississippi for decades. First, as a member of Mississippi's House of Representatives, and since 1993, he has served as a state senator of District 27. He was born and educated in Hinds County, where the capital is located. He wrote a piece for the Clarion Ledger about the prevalence of food deserts in Mississippi and was gracious enough to give me an audience with him to speak further on the topic.
State Senator Hillman Frazier.
Good morning. Thank you for meeting with me. I'm glad that you took the time out of your day to answer these pressing questions.
Thank you. It's a pleasure, and welcome to Mississippi. Glad you're here.
I am glad I'm here too. It's been amazing. The food, the people, it's just been beautiful.
Thank you.
So I had a few questions I'd wanted to ask regarding people with disabilities and a food desert, which was something you had touched on in the article we wrote for the Clarion Ledger.
Mm-hmm.
So my questions were so business from agriculture in the state of Mississippi is worth more than $7 billion, and that's a lot of money. So why are food deserts such an issue in a state that grows so much produce?
That's a very good question. In terms of food deserts, a lot of the major chains have moved out of the inner city because they go into the suburbs to increase their profit margin. In the inner city, people have limited incomes, and they do make money, but not as much as they would make in the suburbs. So that creates a problem. Although our farmers are growing a lot of food in the state and selling a lot of food, that food is not trickling back down into the communities in these supermarkets. So that's one of the problems I see. But one thing that we're doing in the state is that when some of the largest chain stores move out, we try very hard to find a little mom and pop grocery chain to put in there, and that has been fairly successful in this state.
That's great. And how do you believe that food deserts affect people with disabilities?
It affects them because a lot of times they don't have all the transportation to get to the grocery stores. And also within the inner city, sometimes they don't have disability-friendly walkways, so they can get back and forth if they can have that option available to them. So that is affecting them quite a bit. This is a rural state, and it depends quite a bit on public transportation. A lot of folks own cars in some areas. So that's why we have to make sure that We have a transportation system in place that is funded by the government to get them to their apartments, and also some of the shopping, such as food shopping.
And finally, so what kind of solutions do you think can solve this issue? I know you mentioned using like federal or state funds. So could you elaborate on that?
Right. What we're going to provide incentives to grocery stores to locate in these areas or stay as opposed to move to suburbs. And we've been doing that, trying to entice people to come back when stores are abandoned by the larger chains. Just recently, a smaller grocery organization took over a Kroger store in South Jackson that was abandoned for quite a while. It created a food desert in South Jackson. Well, the problem I see there is, although that person moved from one location in the inner city to another location in South Jackson, they in fact created a food desert by leaving the location they were in because it was very convenient to a lot of people at the time. But we have to provide incentives to them to locate in these areas, and also look at different tax credits we can give them to stay there to offset the profit they could make in larger urban areas.
And so I guess my final question is, what is the state or more local government doing to make that happen currently?
Right. We're trying to establish better dialogue with local governments in terms of what they need. One thing that I can say that's going on is that we are providing for more farmers markets in this area. So that is allowing people to have access to food. We do have 2 farmers markets right here in the city of Jackson. One vendor moved out of one farmers market to the suburbs, but we're trying to make sure that they have a safe place and they have a very profitable place they can sell their fresh produce to. So those food deserts can become a thing of the past, so we'd be more aggressive in terms of targeting them, and also making sure that we put farmers markets in those areas, and also give independent grocery chains an incentive to locate in those areas. So we have to do that and have a two-pronged approach. Give these grocery stores an incentive to go there and stay there, and also secondly, make it easier for farmers markets to develop in those areas. Make sure they have a safe place so they can operate in a safe manner.
I'm here at the Mississippi Disability Mega Conference. This conference is the largest disability conference in the state of Mississippi. It's a meeting place for people with disabilities, their families, and professionals like me. Presenters and exhibitors alike share the latest and greatest information and innovations about topics such as healthcare, education, employment, mental health, safety, you name it. I'm here today to learn and to find some people who might be willing to lend me their time and tell me their stories. I won't be filming inside of the conference to respect the privacy of those who attend.
Dr. Scott M. Crawford.
I am Dr. Scott M. Crawford, SCOTT, middle initial M, CRAWFORD. I live in Jackson, Mississippi, and I'm a transportation advocate globally, but I also work on a number of boards and committees for people with disabilities. Living an independent life in Jackson, Mississippi is a huge, huge challenge. And we, people that live in Jackson, have it better than most people in rural Mississippi. I mean, think about it. In rural Mississippi, you have to travel miles and miles to get to your nearest grocery store. Here, hopefully it's a mile or less, but there are places in Jackson that have food deserts, so there's that. I mean, I don't want to downplay that too. But for people with disabilities, especially people with mobility challenges or people who are blind, it's life or death to get your groceries. Why? Because we frequently don't have sidewalks at all. And the sidewalks that we do have are not ADA compliant. For those of you that don't know ADA, it was passed in 1990 and it went into effect in 1992. And it called for cities and governments to write up a self-evaluation and a transition plan which is a plan to come into compliance. And the deadline for that compliance, the deadline to come into compliance was 1995. Many jurisdictions didn't do it, Jackson included. So fast forward to 2017, and we still have people with disabilities dying in their wheelchairs on our streets because there's no sidewalk, or if there is one, they can't use it. So here's a good example of the lengths people have to go through to go shopping in Jackson. This is a friend of mine, Dwan, and he and I wanted to go to Walmart, and then we wanted to go to the other side of the street. This is County Line Road, and there was literally no way to cross the street. So we had to ride in traffic, and this is us waiting for the traffic to stop. This is us waiting in traffic. It's that bad. Here's where the sidewalk ends on County Line Road. This is very frequent in Jackson. The sidewalk abruptly ends, and we have to backtrack and ride in the street. And here's Dwan doing just that. And I'm taking the photographs. So anyway, I try to be a photo documentarian and show the challenges facing, people with disabilities. It took 6 years for me to convince people at the VA, this is at the VA Medical Center, to make their bus stop accessible to people with disabilities. It took 6 years. Here's more friends of mine riding their wheelchairs in the street. One of the points I try to make is that sidewalks help everyone, not just people that use wheelchairs. This is a woman pushing her baby in a stroller in the street because there's no sidewalk. Right over there is the nearest shopping center, the nearest McDade's shopping center, and that's where she's probably going to get groceries. And we have sued. We have sued to try to get accessible sidewalks here in Jackson. That suit failed, unfortunately. And this is more evidence that we need sidewalks. We call these goat trails. People walk so much in this area. This is on State Street, right near my house. There's no sidewalk there. This is a major arterial street. Major arterial, it's Highway 51. And we didn't think to build sidewalks on it. And this is just some of the consequence of not building sidewalks. This is I-55 frontage road. Donna and Powell were acquaintances of mine that rode the bus with me, and they were hit from behind. And that's Donna's wheelchair. Powell, her husband, died on the scene, and Donna died a couple days later. This is me trying to ride in the street, trying to go to a fast food restaurant. This is Northside Drive, right near my house. I do sidewalk surveys, trying to motivate the city to come into compliance with ADA. This is right outside University of Mississippi Medical Center. This is my friend Charles. He works there, and he's blind, obviously. He also has a gait disorder, and he's struggling to get around obstructions in the sidewalk. This is the same area, and this is me getting my wheelchair stuck. So I have to ride in the street. This is also State Street right near Millsaps College. That's Charles, and this is me riding in the street. This isn't safe for a billy goat, much less a human being, especially one with disabilities. He's blind. I don't know how he does it. He's fallen several times. So one of the things we try to do is enlighten and educate the engineers so that when they're building sidewalks, they take into account the needs of people with disabilities. This is one of the better things we've done. Neil Schaefer did a training for engineers and architects that design sidewalks, and I was part of the training, and we literally had the engineers and architects ride in wheelchairs on the sidewalks so that they could grasp why the regulations are so important and why it matters. So that was a good thing. We need more of that. This is I-55 frontage road, not far from where Donna and Powell were killed. And this shows just more people walking in the street because that's what they have to do to get the basics of existence, food. By the way, Kroger, one of our better restaurants with the best produce and the highest quality food and some of the best prices in Jackson, is a few hundred yards away. So I don't know if that's where they're going, but that's where I was going that day when I took this picture. More friends of mine riding their wheelchairs in the street. This is right downtown. There's a sidewalk, just you can't use it. And, this is why we need curb ramps. Pretty obvious. More goat trails. This one's on Northside Drive. This is the route I try to go to restaurants. This is right near a low-income housing complex in West Jackson. And I was there doing a survey, hoping to, again, advocate for people with lower incomes, people with disadvantages. This is a very busy street, and there is a bus route not far away, and I wouldn't be surprised if she and her son were walking from the bus stop. And as you can see, there's goat trails everywhere because there's just no sidewalk at all. The apartment complex is right here. This is what constitutes a bus stop right outside my house. This woman is trying to ride transit. There's no level platform. She has to board. She, like me, has to board and alight the bus in the entranceway to CVS with traffic. And this is her crossing the street. This is what I do every single day to get to the grocery store across the street. Here's another look at the lack of accessible infrastructure and how it impacts families. There's no place to sit here. This is the bus stop near the apartment complex I just referred to. There's nowhere to sit. So, one of the points I want to make is that sidewalks empower people with disabilities to meet their very basic needs. If I can't get to a grocery store, I cannot live independently. People like me in wheelchairs cannot live independently. I can no longer drive due to multiple sclerosis, so driving myself is not an option. So I depend on transit. So we need accessible and affordable transportation. Here it's JTran, and it's got its problems. By the way, we literally had to sue in federal court in 2008 just so I could get, and my friends could get on the back of the bus. Think about it that way. We can't even get on the bus in 2008. Now, they at least have accessible buses, which is good. But the state of the repair of the buses is woefully lacking, and that's been a crisis in the past couple of years. So that's another obstacle people have to get to the grocery stores. Lack of reliable public transit here in Jackson. And we're the capital of the state. You think if we can't do it, who can? So, again, our independence depends upon being able to get fresh, healthy food. Getting that fresh, healthy food in an independent manner means accessible, affordable transportation by way of buses and an accessible route to and from those bus stops, meaning sidewalks and ADA compliance. Without that, we, people with disabilities, are going to be even more dependent upon everybody else. And that's not necessary. It's not fiscally responsible. And it isn't justice. It isn't justice. We, people with disabilities, want to live as independently as we can be. You know, I've written op-eds about the sidewalks, trying to enlighten people about how important they are, that they basically constitute independence, and our very lives depend on it. In case you don't know what it looks like, this is the view from my wheelchair, trying to get to a restaurant on Northside Drive. I do this almost every week. More people trying to get around in scooters. This is right outside my house on Northside Drive. I'm sorry, State Street. Here's just one of many examples of how lack of sidewalk maintenance means we can't actually use them. I can't climb this. It's about 3 or 4 inches. My wheelchair just won't go there. You have to backtrack, ride in the street. A lot of folks drive by this kind of sidewalk and they think, well, what's he doing in the street? Well, believe it or not, I cannot use that sidewalk. It just looks like a sidewalk to the able-bodied. This ran in the USA Today a number of years ago, 2009. This is a friend of mine pointing out a really poorly done curb ramp at Jackson's transportation hub, Union Station. This is the platform where all the JTran buses connect. And whoever designed this completely got it wrong. There needs to be a curb cut this direction as well. We call it a flare. My friend is just pointing out the fact that he can't get there. And this is probably the most used curb ramp in all of Jackson because this is where all the buses connect. And here LaRon literally got stuck. This is a neighbor of mine that lives down the street on State Street. He's going back from Piggly Wiggly, riding in the street because there's no other alternative. I picked this house. I picked this house very specifically because in order for me to live independently, I have to be able to get my groceries by myself, pretty much independently. So I lucked out. I am very privileged to have this particular house because I'm about 100 yards from the nearest grocery store. And all I have to do is cross one street. Granted, it's a dangerous crossing, but I'm privileged. I don't have to ride a mile like many people do. And I don't have to get on the bus to get to the nearest grocery store. A lot of my friends that ride JTran have to ride the bus. They have to walk in the streets. This is a photo I took last year. I think I mentioned earlier that maintenance of the bus system has been a real problem. This was back in the summer of 2016, and the system was literally collapsing. JTran was collapsing because we literally did not have enough buses to run the system, the fixed route system, the integrated system. I was left on the side of the road so many times that summer, it was, I lost count. So in order to raise awareness, I made a sign, and every time I was left on the side of the road, I just got my sign and I started rolling. This is me on State Street, heading to McDade's in Fondren. I was trying to raise awareness to the general public that if we don't have usable buses, this is what you're going to see. You're going to see even more people struggling to get around and risking their lives. One of the points I try to make to my friends on the political right is that you can make all the right decisions in this world. You can work hard. I used to work 70-hour weeks. You can be healthy. I used to ride 70 miles in the morning on my bike. I was an avid cyclist. I had 2 jobs. I was a full-time clinician, part-time professor. I got good grades, got my PhD in clinical neuropsychology. I did everything that I thought was responsible to do in this world. And I still got sick. I still got multiple sclerosis. They need to understand that disability affects everyone. That if it doesn't affect you now, it probably will in the future. Nobody's immune. No matter how responsible you are, no matter how perfect the food you eat is, you can still get sick. You can still get injured. They need to know that. I'm looking for a particular presentation. I think this is it, yeah. I use this as an example of how obstructions in the sidewalk affect everybody, not just people with disabilities. This poor man is trying to get around with his groceries. It's just difficult. Okay, this is what I wanted to show you. This is from Smart Growth America. It's from a report called Dangerous by Design. This is the edition from 2014. You can basically pull up your area of the country, your location, and you can pull up the most recent data on pedestrian deaths. This is a radius around my house, 10-mile radius. And these are just the reported cases of pedestrian deaths in a 10-mile radius around my house. This is a presentation I gave the mayor last year, I think it was 2016, trying to urge him and the city to create accessible infrastructure for everyone that works for all people, regardless of ability. One of the things that I always try to keep in mind is my own privilege as a white male with excellent education, okay? I realize that if it's this bad for me, it is much worse for people with multiple intersectional disadvantages. When I have been confronted on the street by a police officer who told me to get off the street because he didn't realize that sidewalk was not accessible. Well, I was able to, respond calmly and I was able to de-escalate it and it was fine. But I worry about my friends who are people of color, who are also stopped by the police for riding their wheelchairs in the street. And they're not treated as well. And we've brought this up in the ADA Council before, and we are continuing to try to educate the police force about being sensitive to the needs of people with disabilities as they struggle to stay independent and live in the community of their choice. So I try to be aware that if it's bad for me, it's 10 times worse for other people. This is an acquaintance of mine, Clifton, and he came to our ADA council once because he was being harassed by the police for riding his wheelchair in the street. Clifton tries to get around as best he can, and we've been trying to educate the police here in Jackson to be sensitive to the needs of people with disabilities as they struggle to maintain their independence, their autonomy, and basically their freedom to live in the community amongst everybody else. There's another picture that I can't access right now, but the back of his wheelchair is so torn up, he only has that one wheel. The other wheel is completely gone, and he was literally dragging it around on the street. So, I had to basically, call the social worker and see if we could get some help for him to get his wheelchair fixed so that, again, he could be independent as he wants to be. He wears that helmet while he's on the street, which is good. I try to put high visibility vests on myself and the back of my chair. I even have a hat. My friends and I recommend people wear high visibility vests. I try to wear one on myself. I put one on the back of my chair, and I even have a hat to help make me visible on the streets. And the city of Jackson did pass an ordinance that after dark people are supposed to have high visibility gear on or lights. I spent money getting lights put on my chair, again, to help with safety. This is a photo I took in Houston, Texas just last week. It's a friend of mine, Tony, who's totally blind, and he has his guide dog. And this is pretty good infrastructure. It's pretty good. It's got a pedestrian signal. That could be better. It's not really detectable by people who are blind. People who are blind can't feel where that's pointing to. And of course this is right in the middle of the path of travel, so that's not good either. But the thing I want to point out here is that here's the crosswalk, and a lot of times cars take right-hand turns on red, and they're used to doing that. You need to know that when this signal turns white and it says to walk, a lot of cars just keep coming. They see me in my wheelchair. I've got the accessible, protected walk signal. And so I start to roll across the intersection on the crosswalk, but they don't stop. They don't yield. They continue to take their right-hand turn on red as if we don't exist. I almost got killed twice at this very stop last week. And that's pretty typical. It's not unique to Houston. And I would also point out that this is one of the better situations. You've at least got a protected pedestrian button and a signal. But if I had been Tony and I could not have seen this car coming, I would have been killed. No doubt. Tony and I, in this situation, we crossed together, and I kept an eye out for Tony. But one of the things I try to point out to people is watch for pedestrians on crosswalks. You must yield to them. This is what I do for therapy. I call it Keep Building Jackson. It's my vision of an idealized Jackson, Mississippi that's clean, friendly, accessible, safe, and welcoming for everyone. And it's meant to inspire civic pride and motivate people to try harder to make Jackson the way we all want it to be. Part of it is spot on, authentic, and part of it's just aspirational. You'll notice that we have wind turbines. Jackson doesn't really have wind turbines. But again, part of the thing I'm trying to promote is a green, accessible, sustainable society. You know, we've got 3 trains, we've got accessible buses. Last year, I did Union Station, which is downtown. That's our transportation hub. This is Fondren Corner. This is Bailey APAC School. This is the Standard Life building. You can't see it, but on the other side of that is City Hall. So I try to do authentic buildings every single year, and it gets bigger every year. That's a little closer view of Union Station. It takes 2.5 weeks to set up. I have help on the first day. The Boy Scouts help me. This is Bailey APAC School on State Street. Here's some of downtown, the Standard Life building. Here's a hospital. Oh, here's City Hall. This is my rendition of the convention complex. And you're wondering why there's a UFO on top. Well, I figured the kids would want some kind of really interesting convention. So we decided to have a UFO convention and invited the UFOs to come. This is my little dream. Stennis Space Center opens a launch complex in Lego Jackson. That would just be fun. Here's the airport, Maker Wiley Evers International Airport, police station, the State Fair. This is Fondren Corner. This is another authentic building. This is the boat I always wanted but couldn't afford. This is a river tug. And that's actually modeled after a real river tug that you'll find on the Mississippi River. There's Union Station. Union Station was the one I did last year, the big new edition. I think it took 8 months to build. There are no plans. I have to design them myself. I take photographs of the actual building and design it according to those photographs. And I have to order specialized pieces from Lego by the thousands and tens of thousands. But anyway, it's part recreational, it's part therapy for me, and it's also part inspirational, hoping to motivate kids of all ages to make this world a better place, starting with our hometown. And of course, we have creatures like Godzilla. He's my own creation. I just thought he'd be fun. And here's the Ghostbusters, the lady Ghostbusters wrangling him. This is some of the media coverage. Andrew Harrison from WJTV. People always ask me, where do you store it when it's not on display? Well, I had to give up a whole bedroom of my house, and it's literally piled high and deep in boxes in my house. Yeah, so there's that. And I think I said it takes about 2.5 weeks to set up, and on the very first day I have help from the Boy Scouts. I can't do it alone. They help me get it on the table, and it's still kind of broken into sections and pieces and stuff like that, and it takes me at least a couple weeks to get everything put together.
Jonathan May.
So, big question is, what issues do you, as a person with a disability, have when it comes to accessing food?
My big issue, I guess you can say, is having to just watch everything because I have weird allergies, evidently. My big things are I'm allergic to protein with shellfish. I'm allergic to capsaicin. And because of what's going on in my gut, milk doesn't agree with me, so I have to do skim milk or non-lactate milk. So pretty much it's watching myself, but at the same time, it's okay, do I want to even think to eat here because this may risk that, and you know what I mean. But just watch where I go, watch different things, and yes, I'm even bold enough at sometimes that if it's even possible that what I'm about to eat might cause something, I will literally ask for the dietary guide, which is going to list every little minor detail because of my culinary background. So.
I know you had mentioned you had your gallbladder removed, and so has that caused additional complications?
Yeah, I just had endoscope and colonoscopy stuff, which they were doing all that because I was having early signs of Crohn's disease.
So what do you normally have to do when you go either food shopping or to a restaurant?
Food shopping, I mean, for me is one of those kind of things of this week, what do I want to eat? What can I, get that's not only will I eat that will satisfy me, but will the other people in the house like it? Restaurant wise, I look at the menu and I try to figure out, okay, what can I eat now? Do I feel like in my stomach I can go for a burger or a steak, or do I need to stay simple with salad or chicken or something like that?
And with your dietary restrictions, is it difficult in terms of price points when you go shopping to buy things that you can eat without having to worry?
It's more expensive to eat, because it's a thing of I eat, fresh foods. I know how to cook, I know things, but it's the thing of I can't just go to the store and get something from the freezer aisle or something like that, really simple, because I want to know exactly what I'm dealing with, so it doesn't cause any kind of reaction or anything.
And so how does that affect your budgeting process?
It's more expensive. Right now I'm living with my parents, so if I do the shopping, they'll pay me back, but it's kind of one of those things of, I'll put it this way, right now because of all my situation, the only money that can go into my bank account at the moment is from my actual job or, the Social Security. So if they pay me back, I have to go to the bank and cash the check. If they don't give me, I cannot actually put that in, or it's counted as income, and then that causes a whole more rigmarole of issues.
So I know you said you live with other people, like you said, your parents, who don't have the same dietary restrictions as you. So what is eating like with them, considering they don't have the same restrictions as you? Do you all have to eat on a more restricted diet that's more expensive overall, or do they just eat things that you can't eat?
I mean, it's a thing of Mama's trying to do 900 million different diets, so me and her will eat about the same thing. When Daddy cooks, Daddy's out frying fish, or Daddy's, smoking pork loin or something like that. So it's livable, but I will tell you, it's like when Daddy cooks out on the grill, the pork loin or roast or something, am I out of frame? If I eat it, it's going to make my stomach hurt. So it's okay, I'll eat a little bit, but I have to limit how much I eat, because if not, I'll be curled up in a little ball crying like a little baby because my stomach is literally killing me.
So how do you think that affects the dynamic of your home life?
It's a little, I guess it's one of those kind of things of it is what it is, because I'm not going to get into the whole. One of the biggest things is my brother likes, whenever he's home and they do stuff, my brother likes shrimp cooked with the shell on. If they do anything like that inside the house, it will literally make me trigger a migraine and throwing up. It's the protein in the shell. So it's the issue of they have to cook that outside, and the last time Daddy did that, even bringing it in the house with that steam still, doing, it still made me sick. So it's...
Just as a footnote, we as people without disabilities take for granted the basic necessities needed to have a simple meal and all the options that are afforded to us. But for many people with disabilities, it is a constant struggle, and that struggle manifests itself financially, physically, and mentally. So there's different levels of accommodation that you're given, and then when it doesn't happen, you get very ill.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's
So I know you had mentioned kind of the medical side of it when you're having, when you have these issues and you have to go to the doctor. So how has that been like restrictive on your kind of day-to-day life?
I mean, it's just the thing, I guess to me, it's hard to say that it's quote unquote restrictive, at least how that processes in my brain, because it's something I've learned to deal with. It's something that as a functioning adult is okay. This is what I can do, this is what I need to get, and limit the other. I mean, it would be great to go out and get ice cream all the time, but that's one of those things I know I don't need to do, I can't do. Whenever I go shopping, I look for, fresh stuff. I look for things, at least in my head, that I know I can cook, that are going to be quick, that are going to be simple. And if I use any kind of spices, I've learned how I can, use certain kind of peppers, and very limited certain kind of peppers that's not going to trigger the capsaicin or something like that. I don't have any idea if I'm actually answering the question. Like with food stuff, it's a learning thing. It's learning your body. It's learning, okay, this works with this, this doesn't work with this. And it's honestly, at some point, it's okay, my brain starts trying to figure out the chemistry of it all, which is really fun and insanely demented. No, I'm kidding. So, brain, what are we going to do? My God, Pinky, you are thinking what I'm thinking. Yes, squirrel. I think more my main issues, and which we are still trying, there is one thing that is hanging in the air, which I'm still waiting on the test and everything for. It is diazamine sulfate or something like that deficiency, which it causes a whole lot of things from headaches to skin issues to neuropathy. Still waiting on the blood test and blood work for that, but it's also with me. I have Asperger's syndrome, which is diagnosed as pervasive developmental disorder, NS, but it's a thing of part of me wonders, okay, I'm eating this, this, and this. Is this affecting this point of me? Would, changing the diet be able to help anxiety and XYZ? But it's, like I said, at least to me, it's all a learning game, and the more knowledge that I have, I will say this, whenever I was in culinary school, I had my baking and pastry class. When I say this, it sounds like a setup of a really bad joke. My lab partner was a celiac, like so bad of a celiac that literally when he walked in the classroom, he had his lab coat on after the chef's coat. He had rubber gloves. His coat sleeve was rubber banded. Both of them were rubber banded. He wore a surgical doctor's mask. He had his little hat, and literally he looked like the mad culinary scientist. So the setup with the joke is a borderline hypoglycemic and a celiac that can't even be around flour doing pastry and baking. So it's one of those kind of things that, yeah, we're cooking stuff that we can't eat and one of us can't even touch. So it was one of the things toward the end when the chef instructor asked, well, what are things that we can teach? And both of us looked and we're like, we need to touch dietary things. We need to touch stuff of what can a celiac eat? What can somebody with diabetes or hypoglycemia eat? Are there ways chemically that we can, bake stuff that would work for them better? And I will say this, one of the latest fads, and I'm calling it a fad, is everything under the sun, people trying to go gluten-free. That it is a diet. Yes, it's a diet if you are a celiac. If you are not a celiac, you do not need to do gluten-free diets, because especially some of the things that are not truly gluten-free, that people are just marking gluten-free, they are removing the gluten, but they are putting other additives in, because gluten is a binding protein. So that's one of my things is people think that dietary issues, like true life and death dietary issues, are going to be the latest health fad. And that's one thing that people really need to know and invest in, the knowledge of what food actually does, if that makes sense. So that was my little stand, and I'll literally hop off.
So do you think having Asperger's in any way complicates your shopping or eating or kind of social habits around food?
Yeah, I mean, it's not only that, but like allergy stuff, it's okay if I go out to eat, where am I going out to eat? As much as I love Asian food and I can cook Asian food, I can't go to China Buffet or Panda Express, because the last time that I went there, I had a minor capsaicin issue because it wasn't labeled that their orange chicken had a type of pepper in it that caused the same capsaicin issue as I did that the Oriental salad at another place, the Thai salad at another place caused. And this was one of those things of I'm sitting there and I'm eating with Mom because I love Oriental salad. I didn't think of anything. And I'm eating and my first reaction was like, oh, this is kind of hot. We get in the car and my lips are blistered. And Mom looks over at me after I mentioned my lips blistered and I had streaks running down my neck. Went back in, asked for the dietary guide because I wanted to make sure, they didn't prep you know, anything seafood wise that protein could have transferred to the salad or the dressing or something like that. And the person is like, well, we did use this kind of pepper for the salad and you might have had something like that. And I'm like, okay, number one, you're not a manager, but okay. So we looked it up, and luckily on the way home, Mama had decided to give me a Dramamine, because we got an hour, 45 minutes later, we got home and I'm throwing up. Like, have to pull over on the side of the road throwing up because I had a bad reaction to capsaicin. So that's, I guess, my big thing is not knowing what was there, what, labeled out, especially with the weird allergy. And whenever I tell people I'm allergic to capsaicin, they look at me like, huh? What's capsaicin? Oh, it's a protein in peppers that, regulate how hot a pepper is. I guess that's the big thing, is there needs to be more knowledge out there. And I know for itty bitty kids or whatever, that needs to be parents' responsibility, but for, an adult, young adult, teenager, young adult, that needs to become to the point of we're taking responsibilities for ourselves. But to do that, the industry needs to have an understanding that more knowledge about their products need to be put out, and not just, well, it has so many calories and, but an actual, this is what went into making the product. Am I making sense?
And so I know you mentioned the Dramamine. So what kind of medications do you have to take either before, or during, or after you have these kind of adverse reactions to products that you have these like allergies or issues with?
I mean, immediate stuff is like, Mama had given me the Dramamine or something, but if it gets worse, I'm going to the doctor and they will give me like a steroid shot or something like that. But I guess you could say the actual quote unquote allergies that I have is more something that is something that's, it's not literally a food allergy, but it is a protein synthesis allergy, if that makes sense. So it's a thing of, there's not medicines out there at the moment that I know of that would, I can take this so I can eat this food. It's something that I have to be knowledgeable of what I'm eating, the environments I'm around, if that makes sense.
So I guess we'd like to start wrapping up. Is there anything else you'd like to kind of add for people who are really not aware of the intersections of, disability and food, especially different types of access to food?
I mean, I know I've worked at Disney, and it was a thing of when somebody would walk up and say, we have an allergy, we would pull out, the dietary guides. And just like, your chemical guides and stuff like that, that are at businesses and restaurants and everything, everybody needs to have that dietary guide, and they need to be readily available. Because it is serious stuff. It's not just, oh, well, I found out I had an allergic reaction because I almost died at a restaurant from eating shellfish. But it's stuff that's out there that, with knowledge, I think a lot of the main issues could be avoided. But it also takes time, and it takes customer service to step out of the realm of it's all about making money to the point of having the human condition to be, okay, do my guests, do my customers have allergies, and what can we do to make that readily available and accommodating to them, so they have just the best experience as this person over here that has the ability. So, and that goes for not only allergies, but that goes for, you know, special dietary needs of people that may not can process stuff, that, if that makes sense. So that's going to be the main issue, is knowledge.
Thank you.
Lee Cole.
Hello, my name is Lee Cole, and I live in Jackson, Mississippi. I've been in Jackson since 2005. I moved from Chicago, Illinois to Jackson in 2005. I lost my sight in October 1994. I have a neuropathy in my eyes, so I am blind. I have little vision, some vision, so I can see some things. But for 10 years after I lost my sight, I was still living in Chicago. However, I moved to Mississippi in 2005, where I rejoined my family. I've been living pretty much independently since I moved back to Mississippi, making some adjustments in living in the South. It's been somewhat of a change, especially around some services that were easily accessible in Chicago that's not easily accessible here. And some of those services are services that we normally take for granted. But with people with disabilities, it becomes more of a challenge and more of a daily challenge to get those services. Since my disability and losing my sight, I've been working here in Mississippi with several organizations for people with disabilities, making sure our rights are respected, making sure we get access to services, making sure people with disabilities get the basic services that they need. And in reference to the encounters that I've had since I've been here in Mississippi, it's been quite challenging. Housing is a challenge for people with disabilities. I was blessed to be able to get into housing quite quickly, but people with disabilities oftentimes have problems finding accessible housing. Transportation is a huge problem because of the basic philosophy that I found moving back to Mississippi is that transportation has been a premium. Transportation has not been a primary thought for communities in the areas. Mississippi is quite rural, so transportation is a real issue for people in the rural communities as well as in urban communities such as where I live here in Jackson. It is very hard to get from Jackson to another town close by, such as in Madison County or Rankin County or anywhere close around, because there's no public transportation that's accessible to people with disabilities. we have a public system, transportation system here in Jackson that will take us around the Jackson area. However, if you want to go outside of Jackson, that becomes a real challenge. Having said that, I say that to tell you that in trying to access food to maintain, your nourishments and so forth, it becomes a challenge, especially for those of us who are independent, even though we have our disability or whatever. There is quite a bit of a challenge getting out and about to the grocery stores, getting out and about with some assistance to shop. I have some family members that will go to the grocery store, or I'll make a list and they will get my things that I need. But it's not like going to the store and shopping on your own. I do that occasionally with my family members. Go in the store and look at the items and get the items that I need. But that's my choice to do that, simply because I want to maintain some level of independence in my shopping. Where I live here, I live in a senior housing, and where I live, there are a number of people that receive food from the Meals on Wheels. I think they come in once a week and bring in meals for people who are on the Meals on Wheel program. However, that's another challenge, because of the fact that there are people who've been waiting for Meals on Wheels for forever. Me, I was one of them. I've been reevaluated several times for the service, Meals on Wheels service, but I have yet to receive the Meals on Wheels. I was told that there's a humongous waiting list for people, elderly people and people with disabilities, for Meals on Wheels. There are some services throughout Jackson that will provide food on a regular basis for people. Stew Pot comes to memory for me. There are some church organizations that will hand out food on a regular basis, that have food pantries and so forth. There are some organizations will give food, fresh vegetables, canned goods, some meats. They're scattered around the city. You have to meet the certain criteria for that. And one of the things that create a problem for that program, those kind of programs for people with disabilities, if you don't have transportation to get to them, you can't access those services. Where my brother lives, he lives in senior housing, and they bring a box to them, a box of food to them on a regular basis. I think it's every other week or something like that. And those boxes consist of canned goods, different kinds of dry foods like rice and beans and so forth, and that kind of thing. But still, if you're disabled and you can't get to the place because of transportation, you still can access those food services. I know there are some other means of getting to and from, but for the majority of people who have disabilities, I find that they are homebound or they have to depend on family members to get them somewhere, get them to the store, and get them to various places to shop for food. Now, there's one service which is interesting that I'm going to start exploring is our local grocery store, Kroger's, has a program that is set up for people who need to have assistance shopping. And that program is, I believe you can do it online. I'm not sure whether you can call in. I'm exploring that now. But I have friends that use the program at Kroger's to place their order, and I believe it's online, to place their order for the groceries that they want, and Kroger's will have staff to shop for them, and the person can then pick the groceries up, come and get the groceries that's already been selected for them. So I have a couple of friends that's using that. The other thing about one of the challenges, there's always challenges that we as people with disabilities have. If you're shopping online, that's fine for people who have access to computers or smartphones that are technology savvy. But a lot of people with disabilities don't have a phone, a smartphone, don't have access to a computer. So again, that's the challenge of trying to access food, groceries, and what have you for people with disabilities. There are some other programs you can order online food and that kind of thing to be delivered. But again, you got to be computer savvy. You got to be have a smartphone, or you have to be able to have someone that can take you and pick up the food. Food delivery, where I came from, you can get some food delivered to your house or what have you. But there's always that challenge where there are people on the waiting list for certain services like that. Again, like I think some of the times we think that, we take for granted that, you can get to the store, you can get here or there to pick up food. And a lot of times that's a real challenge for people with disabilities. I think that, there are opportunities that could be made available to expand services, but again, most of the food donations that churches get are donated, and funding is a problem to make sure people, services, church services, StuPot, and all the other organizations, the city, have money to provide the services, the food services. So, there's that's really a concern now with funding, whether there's going to be monies available for these organizations to continue to do what they do. And as the population grows for people with disabilities, that's going to be a continued problem with obtaining the basic needs that people need to have to continue their quality of life. And I think that we have to be mindful of that. There are some advantages and disadvantages in any kind of service, but I think that if we don't keep our eye on the prize, of maintaining the basic needs for people with disabilities, a lot of people are going to suffer, a lot of people are going to fall by the wayside. And I think that that's something that we all have a responsibility to make sure that don't happen.
So what do you think are the consequences of not funding services that are essential for people with disabilities to be able to, access food and live independently?
Well, I think with people with disabilities come health issues, diabetes, and other health issues that require people to have regular meals. And if those aren't provided for people with disabilities, you're going to see more people showing up at the emergency room because their sugar has elevated or their sugar has dropped, or for whatever reason they missed a meal. You're going to see more people with more health issues. That's going to be more prevalent with people with disabilities because you can't access food. And then too, if people with disabilities such as myself don't get the nutritions and what have you that they need to maintain themselves, that decreases their quality of life, which means that I may end up, say for instance, if I wasn't able to access food, I may end up with more medical problems, and that's a drain on the health system. If funding is not provided for people with disabilities to get food or whatever, there are a lot of people, I'm not privileged to, but I've heard from other sources that there are a lot of people just trying to maintain, and that's a problem. That's a problem for people with disabilities when you got food issues and you can't get to grocery stores and whatever. You can't get Meals on Wheels, and that's a big issue. Even though I work around not receiving Meals on Wheels or whatever, but I recall when I first moved back to Mississippi and moved back to Jackson in 2000 and maybe 6 or 7, I applied for services, Meals on Wheels, and here it is 2017, I haven't received them. And if I be the first to say, let's the one who can't get food, Meals on Wheels before me, because I can get out, even though I have challenges getting transportation, but my challenges are less compared to people who are homebound and can't get out, or the elderly who can't get out to get their meals. So I think that we need to really look at the basic needs for people with disabilities, even though there are a lot of people who are disabled who want their independence, want to maintain their own self-sufficiency and live in their own homes, work a job, try to get to and from places without having the challenge of getting there. And also being able to just have a quality of life that's that they want to live the life that they want. So the consequences of not having accessible, being accessible to food and other basic needs is that a lot of people may become dependent on the system. Some people, depending on their age or medical condition, may develop a medical condition where they may have to enter into a nursing home because of not having food or not eating properly. The drain on the health system for people who, for the lack of food and nutrition, have to show up at the doctor's office or the emergency rooms. So there's so many consequences of not having the proper meals and the proper foods and the proper nutritions to maintain is consequential, and we have to be conscious of that. And one other thing I like to mention, even with, say, a person who's diabetes, to eat properly becomes a real challenge. Having to eat maybe 3 meals a day or snacks in between or what have you, it becomes a real challenge because you have to be able to maintain your control your diabetes, and if you can't do that if you don't have the proper meals. So one other point I like to make is that there's another piece here that all comes together with the food, the lack of food, the lack of the ability to access food, is there are some people with disabilities who can't prepare their foods. Meals on Wheels is give them 1 meal a day, but what about the other 2 meals? You know, that's something that, you know, we have to think about in terms of how effective are the services that we're getting. You know, people can't go to different food places and sit down and have a meal. There are lots of people with disabilities can't go to a restaurant, can't afford it to go have a meal or go eat on a regular basis. So we have to think about that in terms of making sure people with disabilities and the elderly get the things that the basic needs met, and I think everything else will fall in place. You know, even with me being as independent as I am, and I'm gonna bring it more personal, that I feel that I'm self-sufficient. I was able to do, before I lost my sight, things for myself, work and travel and go when I wanted to go. But now, since I am disabled, I have the challenges of and you have support systems in place, but still there are sometimes a need to get to the grocery store, get where you need to go. Yes, I'll make a list, and yes, I give it to, say, one of my siblings to pick up something, but you got to be around their time, which is okay, because you can't have people available to you oftentimes when you need it. But I think, you know, I always have to have another plan, and sometimes this is just my own ability to be self-sufficient. I always tell people to have another plan. Always have another plan. Don't depend on one source for your self-sufficiency. Have a couple plans in place. If I can't get to the grocery store or what have you, you know, have another plan. Like, that's why I'm looking into the program at Kroger's to see how I can navigate that service, how Kroger can help me when I don't have anybody available to pick up food for me or what have you. And so, it's so many different variables that we have to look at as people with disabilities. And then there's some people just don't have, their ability is just to make sure they go to the doctor. So we always have to kind of share information. That's one good thing about the network, the disability community and the network. You find out different things that work for somebody that may work for you. And that's why we're always, the disability community is a good network of people to find out, well, if this works for me, this may work for you. Or I've tried this. It didn't work for me, but you try it and see what happens. So, that's how many of us navigate the system, is to by trial and error. If it don't work for you, it may work for me. I'm gonna try the Kroger system and see if it works for me. So that's just how we navigate the system as people with disabilities.
Oh, forgive me, for I do not know my kin. I do not know beyond my struggles. I sit with lavish thoughts while they struggle and toil in the sun. Their graves road markers and their bodies turned to dust. For I do not know their struggles. For I sat up on high and did not think to look around. So I waited down in the delta, and I am born anew.
Director, Washika Torres. Post-production coordinator and editing, John Schiavone. Camera operators, Washika Torres, Nino Fuller. Storyboard, Washika Torres in conjunction with the Bowling Green State University DREAM, Disabilities, Rights, Education, Awareness, and Mentoring Club. Film consultant, Dominic Lonizak Evans. Soundtrack, Negro Blues and Hollers, track number 9, Mississippi Blues, Washington, D.C., Library of Congress, American Folklife Center, 2015, Washington, D.C., Library of Congress, Recording Laboratory, AFSL 59, 1962. Done with funding from the Stoddard and O'Neill School of Cultural and Critical Studies Fund, Bowling Green State University. A CEM Creating Equitable Media Production.